Lauryn Hill made one album. It sold 10 million copies in the United States, and it won 5 Grammy Awards in a single night, more than any woman in history had ever won at one time. If you were alive in 1998, you did not choose to hear it. It found you. And everyone watching this believes the same comfortable thing, that a record that big must have made her rich for the rest of her life. The paperwork tells a colder story. She paid $5 million of it away before the credits were even settled. And a decade later, the same machine that let her record label keep the master recordings did not knock on the label's door. It knocked on hers, and it put her in a federal prison cell over her taxes. So tonight, we are going to do the one thing nobody else covering this story has bothered to do. We are going to follow the money. 7 steps, from the Diamond album to the prison gate. And the number they really do not want you to see is not the 10 million records. It is waiting for you in step 4, and it is only $500. Here is how this breaks down. 7 steps. We start with how big she truly was. Then we open the contract and the machine underneath it. We walk through the lawsuit that drained her before the album was even a year old. And we show you that $500 number. Then the cell, the exact charges, the exact figure. And we finish where every one of these stories finishes, with the only question that matters. Who has the money today? Stay with us all the way there. Step 1. Who she was. The story goes that a producer first noticed her when she was 13 years old, singing on a stage at the Apollo in Harlem, and the crowd booed her. Most children would have walked away from music forever that night. She did the opposite. Within a few years, she was part of a group called the Fugees, and in 1996, that group released an album called The Score. Hold that album in your mind, because it matters later. The Score sold more than 20 million copies worldwide, one of the best-selling records any hip-hop group has ever made. And here is the part almost nobody mentions. That entire album was recorded in the basement of a house that belonged to one member's family, on an advance of $135,000, split 3 ways after costs. Remember that number too. Then Lauryn Hill went solo, and in August of 1998 she released The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. It did not just sell, it detonated. 422,000 copies in the first week alone, which at the time set a record for a female artist that stood for almost 20 years. It went to number 1. It stayed on the charts for almost 2 years. And at the Grammy Awards, she walked away with 5 of them in one night, including Album of the Year. The first time a hip-hop album had ever won that category. That album is now certified Diamond, 10 million copies in the United States, and somewhere between 15 and 20 million worldwide. By any honest measure, it generated tens of millions of dollars. Now watch how little of that was ever allowed to reach the woman who made it. Step 2. The machine. There is only one public number that tells us what she personally kept, and it comes from a Rolling Stone investigation. According to their reporting, across 1998 and 1999, Lauryn Hill grossed around $40 million from royalties, advances, touring, and merchandise. And of that $40 million, she pocketed about $25 million. On the surface, $25 million sounds like the happy ending. Hold on, because this is where the other videos stop and where we are just getting started. Here is the first uncomfortable fact. We do not actually know her royalty rate. The exact percentage she earned on every album is buried inside a contract that has never been released. And that is not a small detail. That is the whole game. When we made our video on Toni Braxton, the singer who sold $170 million of records, and received $1,972, we could show you her rate. It came to 33 cents on an album, not 33%. 33 cents. With Lauryn Hill, the label kept even that number in the dark. So think about what that means. The amount of money she earned per record is a secret, but the value of the label that released her is a matter of public record. Her album came out on Rough House, a joint venture with Columbia, which is owned by Sony, and in 1999, Forbes valued Rough House at over $175 million. Her share, hidden. Their share, printed in a magazine. That is not an accident. That is the design. The person who makes the music is kept in the dark. The company that owns the paperwork is valued in public in the hundreds of millions. And here is the cruelest detail of all. In music, the label owns the master recording. The actual version of every song that plays when you press play is an asset, and it is not her asset. She sang every note of the most acclaimed album of her generation, and she does not own the recordings. To this day, she never has. We will come back to who does own them. First, we have to talk about the money that left her hands before the album was even a year old. Step 3. The lawsuit. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill came out in August of 1998. By December, 4 months later, she was being sued. A group of 4 musicians who called themselves New Ark filed a 50-page lawsuit. Their claim was simple, and it was devastating. They said they had helped write and produce the album, 13 of its 14 songs, and that they had never been given proper credit. On the finished record, the credit read that it was produced, written, and arranged by Lauryn Hill, almost entirely by her alone. There are 2 ways to read this, and the truth is more interesting than the myth. The generous reading is that the album genuinely was her vision, and collaborators always claim more when a record sells 10 million copies. The engineer who worked on it defended her and said it was absolutely her creative vision. But the musicians made a harder case in their filing. Their lawyer said, and we are quoting, that if you put Lauryn Hill in a studio alone, she could not do it again. And here is the detail that tells you how it happened. When these musicians worked with her, they never signed contracts. There was no paperwork. And when someone raised that, she reportedly told them, "We all love each other. This ain't about documents. This is blessed. This ain't about documents." That one sentence is the entire tragedy of this story in miniature. Because in the music industry, the documents are the only thing that is real. The love is not real. The blessing is not real. The paperwork is real. And she had learned that lesson from the wrong side, by not having any. In February of 2001, she settled with those musicians. The terms were officially undisclosed, but Rolling Stone reported the figure, and the figure was $5 million. $5 million gone, out of the money from an album that was barely 2 years old, not spent on a mansion, not lost in a bad investment, paid out to settle who really made the record. And a friend of hers told Rolling Stone that this was the beginning of a chain effect that would turn everything a little crazy. And we still have not gotten to the $500 number. That is next, and once you hear it, you will understand exactly how little of a diamond album ever reaches the people who build it. Step 4. $500. A 19-year-old kid played piano on one of the album's most beloved songs, a track called Everything Is Everything. He was not famous yet, and on the credits he is listed under his real name, so most people have no idea it is even him. That kid was John Legend. Years later, he told the story of what he was paid for playing on a diamond-selling, Album of the Year winning record. He was paid $500, a flat fee. And in his own words, no publishing, No, nothing. Sit with that number next to the others. The album generated tens of millions of dollars. The label was valued at over $175 million. And a future superstar who played on one of its signature songs walked away with $500 and no stake in it whatsoever. That is not a story about one greedy person. That is the structure, built so the money flows up to whoever owns the recording, while everyone who made the sound gets a flat fee and a thank you. John Legend was fine. He became one of the biggest artists in the world on his own terms. But at 19, he saw exactly how the machine divides the money. And the machine was about to do something to Lauryn Hill that it almost never does to a label. It was going to send a person to prison. Step 5. The number they do not want you to see, and the cell. Here is where this stops being a story about music and becomes a story about the government. Between 2005 and 2007, Lauryn Hill did not file federal tax returns. During those 3 years, she earned more than $1.8 million, mostly from music and film royalties run through companies she controlled. Add the following 2 years, and the unpaid state taxes, and the total income involved was around $2.3 million, with a total tax loss of almost exactly $1 million. She did not hide in a foreign country. She did not run. When the case became public, she wrote a long statement explaining herself, and what she said in it is the reason this story matters. She said she had withdrawn from society because she felt she was being manipulated and that there were real threats to herself and her family. And then she said this in court. I needed to be able to earn so I could pay my taxes without compromising the health and welfare of my children, and I was being denied that. She went further. She compared herself to something older and darker. She said, I am a child of former slaves. I got into an economic paradigm and had that imposed on me. I sold 50 million units, and now I am up here paying a tax debt. You do not have to fully agree with her to see the shape of it. A woman who sold 50 million records across her career, who was kept in the dark about her own royalty rate, who watched $5 million leave over a lawsuit, who owns none of her master recordings, ended up in a federal courtroom because she owed the government money. She said the system itself had trapped her from earning cleanly. On the 6th of May, 2013, a federal judge sentenced her to 3 months in prison. Before she was even sentenced, she had already paid back more than $970,000 of the debt. The judge added a fine of $60,000 on top, and on the 8th of July, 2013, Lauryn Hill walked into a minimum security federal prison in Connecticut, and she served her time. The label that kept the largest share of the money from her album did not send anyone to prison. Rough House and Columbia did not stand in that courtroom. She did. That is the inversion at the heart of this whole story. When the money is made, it flows up to the people who own the paperwork. When the bill comes due, it lands on the artist. And here is the last cruel detail of the cell. To pay off the tax debt, she needed money fast. So around the time of her sentencing, she signed a brand new deal. And she signed it with Sony, the same corporate family that owned Columbia, that owned the machine that had kept the biggest share in the first place. The reported figure was around $1 million for 5 new songs. The same system that had held on to the money now advanced her the money to pay the debt she went to prison for. That is not a happy ending. That is the machine closing a loop. This is the exact pattern we walked through in our video on TLC, the best-selling American girl group of all time, who sold $75 million of records, and each took home about $50,000 before filing for bankruptcy. And it is the same machine we opened in our Whitney Houston video. A woman who made $250 million and died with $40,000 in the bank. If you want to understand how the biggest voices in music end up with the least, both are sitting right here on this channel. The same story, from a different door. Step 6. This was never just her. If you think Lauryn Hill was simply careless with money, you have to widen the lens, because she was not the exception. She was the rule. Look at the group she came from. The Fugees, who sold over 20 million copies of the score, recorded that album in a basement on an advance of $135,000. And decades later, the three of them were suing each other over money from a reunion tour, with claims and counterclaims about who took what off the top. The most successful hip-hop group of their era, and the money still ended in a courtroom. The same is true everywhere you look. Toni Braxton sold $170 million of records, received $1,972 from her first contract, and filed for bankruptcy twice. TLC sold 10 million copies of one album, took home about $50,000 each, and all three filed for bankruptcy at the peak of their fame. Different artists, different decades, different labels, the same blueprint every time. The artist makes the art. The structure keeps the money. And the more successful the artist becomes, the further the money floats from the person who sang the songs. Lauryn Hill was not bad with money. She was inside a machine that was built from the first signature to make sure the money was never really hers to be bad with. Step 7. Who has the money today? So here we are, at the only question that actually matters. It is more than 25 years since that album came out. Where is the money now? The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is still one of the most streamed albums of its entire decade. Every day, somewhere in the world, hundreds of thousands of people press play on it. New listeners discover it constantly. It never stopped earning. It is financially still alive. And the master recordings, the actual recordings that generate that money every single day, are owned by Sony through its legacy division, not by Lauryn Hill. When you stream that album tonight, the largest share of what that stream generates flows to a corporation, the same corporate family that was there at the beginning. She made the most beloved album of her generation, and a company owns the version of it that plays. She still tours. In 2023, she took the album back out on the road for its 25th anniversary, and some of those shows were among the biggest concerts of the year. But even now, the machine has not let go. In 2024, she had to cancel part of a tour and blamed low ticket sales on the very headlines that follow her. And as recently as this year, public records show the state of New Jersey filed 2 new tax liens against her, one for $133,000 and another for over $758,000. This story is not history. It is happening right now while you are watching this. So the next time you hear that an artist sold 10 million records and somehow ended up in a courtroom, do not ask what they wasted the money on. Ask who wrote the contract. Ask who owns the recording. Because that is where the money always went, and that is the part they are hoping you never read. The voice was always hers. It just turned out the money never was. If this is the kind of story you want more of, the ones where we open the contracts the labels would rather keep closed, then do us one small favor and subscribe. It genuinely is the single thing that tells the algorithm to show these investigations to more people, and it costs you nothing. And if you are watching this on your television right now, which a lot of you are, here is how. Grab your remote and select the name of our channel just below this video, where it says Celebrity Investments. That opens our channel page. You will see a subscribe button. Press it with your remote, and you are in. That is all it takes, and it means you will actually see the next one when it goes live. Because we have already pulled the paperwork on the next name on our list. And it is going to make you look at a voice you have loved your whole life in a way you never have before. We will see you there.